Scotty.
Yeah, no worries. How you going, Berkey?
Good to see you,
All
Scotty.
good.
Thanks for coming along, mate. Really good to see you. Happy face again. It's a thrill to have you here on our show. Scotty, can we dive in, if we can get started, mate, if we can dive into the early years of Colin Scott in Townsville? What did that look like as a kid growing up, your family life, all that sort of thing?
Yeah, well, for me, obviously rugby league was a big part of my life, and I think it's for any young fella or any young one growing up, and with my job now, I work with a lot of part Indigenous, of course, and I talk to a lot of the young Indigenous kids around and make sure that get yourself into sport, whether it be rugby league, boxing, or whatever. It can set you up, in life in general. And for me, obviously rugby league was my background, and it took me through some great years, and as was mentioned, being a part of the very first State of Origin game, and then moving to Brisbane from Townsville, and playing with Wynnum and playing with, in the premierships there and with all the great players and that. But growing up in Townsville, mate, as a young fella, rugby league was my life, and it took me to a lot of places.
Mate, did you have just some intel about your mum and dad, brothers and sisters? Were you like a working class family in Townsville?
Yeah, well, look, I was adopted as a young fella to my mother's best friend.
Yep.
And I grew up, in a non-Indigenous family, and it's when I say it's funny, every holidays or school holidays I used to go to my mum's place, and as a young fella growing up, it wasn't until I was about 10, and I said to me foster mother, I said, how come I keep going to their place on school holidays? She said, that's your mother. I said,
really?
Well, mother, aren't you? And she said, no, don't worry about it. So back in those days, that was just a part of life.
Yep.
And I just got on with my life, and I said, oh, well, that just must be the way things are. And just grew up along those lines. But now, having a look back at it, a lot of people, take it a bit difficult, with being adopted out or not growing up with their families. But, for me, I look at it as, it was in the bad times, and my mother's best friend helped her out, by adopting me. So it was great, and I had two families. So
that's nice, Scotty.
That was great.
Really good. So you had the love of two mums and two families. You can't complain about that.
No. And obviously rugby league, as I said, took over my life, and playing junior league. I looked at my coaches as fathers, my junior coach, Merv Keys, in Townsville, he was my junior coach right through the juniors, and I always called him Dad. And then when we got into the senior ranks, it was Marshall Colwell, and he captain coached us up there. And then I went to Brisbane, and Desi Morris. I called him Dad too.
That's fantastic. So, Colin, in those early Townsville years, was there something that made you different? Did you have a lot more hunger than some of your mates or some other players that you felt you could really go that next step from Townsville elsewhere? Yeah,
well, obviously coming up through the grades, our A grade players, and a lot of them went and played for South in Brisbane and made A grade, and I used to look at that and think to myself, I want to do that, and I want to go to Brisbane, So I had a lot of inspiration from a lot of fellas in Townsville, older guys than me, that went on that path. And so, I sort of set myself a bit of a goal to, I want to follow these guys, I want to play in Brisbane too. And and followed along and went along that path and backed it up.
Because in those days, Simo, you can vouch for this, mate. The Foley Shield was a fantastic competition, wasn't it, for North Queensland? Like some of the legends that came out of Foley Shield football, I think in North Queensland, Colin, like, Vernon, Frank Daisy are icons up there, aren't they, to be honest with you? Simo, what's your thoughts on the whole Foley Shield comp?
Yeah, mate. I mean, it's probably one of the most powerful competitions in Queensland. And like you said, those legends that have come out of that in that region is phenomenal, which we're just off camera, Berkey, Scotty and I were talking about rugby league in regional Queensland areas, and Scotty was just saying of how much untapped talent lies up in those sort of areas that, possibly have flown under the radar and never actually gone on to bigger and better things. But up in that Foley Shield, they would have been superstars.
Oh, for sure. And just on the Foley Shield side of things, I mean, that was something for us too as young fellas to play in Foley Shield. And I did in 79 against the Daisy boys.
Yep.
They were just great players, legends.
Absolutely.
And one thing that happened in 79, I got picked in an invitational side to play the North Queensland side. And Frank Daisy was the fullback in the North Queensland side.
Wow.
He was too.
And then I got picked in the Queensland side. From that, and I went on and played for Queensland. And I remember getting interviewed one time by this guy, and he said to me, he said, Scotty, he said, look, I want to do an interview with you. I said, oh yeah, right. And this is before the Foley Shield final.
Yeah.
In 79. And he said to me, he says, I'm going to ask you a question. This is what I want you to say. And I said, oh yeah, right. I was only a young kid. And he said, yeah, Frank Daisy's the North Queensland fullback and you're the Queensland fullback. How do you reckon you'll go on the weekend? And he said, I want you to say, we'll see who's number one. And so I did. I just said, we'll see who's number one. I went back to my motel and I went back in. I'm thinking,
oh no,
mate, these Daisy boys, they can fight, man.
Yeah.
So I rang him up at the radio station. I said, mate, can you do me a favour? He said, what's that, Scotty? He said, don't play that interview. I said, what, mate? Why? He said, it's a good interview. I said, no, mate, don't play that interview. Mate, you don't know these Daisy boys. They can fight. So he did. He cut it.
Yeah.
Yeah. But,
so, Scotty,
mate,
so moving from 79, how did you get to Brisbane? I mean, that transition, and obviously was it a hard decision to leave, having your roots there? I mean, how did that sort of come about with the offer to come to East initially? Yep. And that decision to move south? Yeah,
well, back in 79, I went through the system. Back in those days, you could make the Queensland side from, Townsville, Cairns, wherever you were. You had to play for Queensland country and then city versus country in the system. And I went through that and made the Queensland side in 79. Played for Queensland, and I ended up staying in Brisbane for about a month, because we were playing the state interstate games back then.
Yeah. Back
in 79, and then the Origin game come around in 1980, the very first game. So mate, it was what happened was that East came up and signed myself and Gene Miles.
Yep.
And Tony Cambrewers, and we were going to East because Des Miles was the coach, but they sacked him, and then we pulled out of the contracts. And Gene actually sat out the 1980 season, but I ended up going to East about March or April because I said, oh, look, I want to play for Queensland again. So I went to East, but they put me in reserve grade, and I played reserve grade all season until they picked the Queensland side, and they picked me from reserve grade to play for Queensland.
So just out of curiosity, Cole, who would have been the East A grade fullback in 1980? Roger Kewen or?
No, Alan Power, actually.
Alan Power, yeah, ex-South guy.
Yeah.
Okay,
they signed him from Sydney.
Yeah,
and,
of course.
He was a great player back in his days, but obviously as the back end of his career.
Yeah.
But I didn't end up playing A grade till I finished the Origin series, and went back and ended up playing in the centres. That's right. And then the next year, we all went to Wynnum where Des Morris was, because we all wanted to play for Des under Des Morris. Yeah. So we all went to Wynnum. Greg Dowling signed, Terry Butler, Gino, myself, Tony Cambrewers. So there was a lot of us that went from one Townsville to East. Yeah.
Now we're going to come to those golden years of Wynnum shortly, but 1980, I think it's July 12th or July 15, 1980. We're 40 years this year from the very first game. Can you believe it? 40 years.
Yeah, July 8th, yep.
July 8th, beg your pardon. Okay, I knew it was July. I was actually at the match as a 15-year-old. It was the best night of my life. But, mate, I'm salivating thinking about someone like you. I mean, can you take us through how you got picked, what happened, how you found out. It's a story a lot of people want to know about those days, about finding out things.
Yeah, okay. Well, obviously, going back to how it all started, Ron McAuliffe obviously was a man that put the gesture to the New South Wales guys or authorities and said that can we do a state of origin concept or a state of origin so that the Queensland players that were playing for New South Wales can come back to Queensland and play for Queensland. And they weren't a real fan of it, but they had a good chat and that. And then I think the players sort of said, yeah, well, okay, if you give us $1,000 a game, we'll vote for it. So it went ahead, and thank God they did, because we got the $1,000 Queenslanders. But yeah, mate, look, I couldn't. Yeah, I was just overwhelmed, mate, and especially playing with Arthur Beetson, you know, someone I grew up idolising, and then here I am playing with him. And I remember, as I was saying to him earlier, I said he came to the dressing room and I looked at him. I said, Arthur Beetson, how is this? And he walked over to me and said, "How you going, Scotty?" I couldn't believe it. After training, I ran down to the phone box, rang Mum, and told her that Arthur Beetson knew my name. Yeah.
That is gold,
mate. You know, here I am, you know, kid from the bush, Townsville, growing up watching this bloke play, and here I am playing with him. You know, I couldn't, you know, obviously it's different now, you know, with the football side of things, you know. But back in those days, mate, I couldn't believe it, mate. Here I am running out on the field with Arthur Beetson. I couldn't believe it. And I remember the first game and the roar, the sound of the crowd when they introduced him onto the field. It was deafening, man. And I get goosebumps now just thinking about it and remembering, you know, that night was just unbelievable. Beautiful. You know. It was just, and it was the best night too, because obviously we won the game, and I was his waiter for the night. I was getting him beers all night, you know. So
something's intriguing me about that game, Scotty, though, is who did most of the talking in that dressing room, like prior to you running out? Who was doing the most talking?
Well, obviously Big Arthur was you know, main actor, but you know, John McDonald obviously he was the coach and that, but mate, obviously Arthur, you know, when he got up, everyone just sat there and looked at him, you know, and listened to him, you know. And he gave us all a good message too, you know, saying to me, you know, as a young fella, he said, "Hey, mate, Scotty, I know it's your first big game, but I started where you are now, mate. So, mate, make the most of the opportunity." And I think that was the best message I ever got, you know. You got to make the most of the opportunities you get, and obviously, I just got out there and done my job.
Because interestingly, you got picked from reserve grade, and if my memory serves me correct, Arthur got picked from reserve grade.
That's right. He was playing Parramatta reserve grade in Sydney. Yeah.
So isn't it amazing that you both got plucked from reserve grade, you know, and went on to be, you know, legends of the game. You know, so.
and proud to say that, you know, we're the first two Indigenous players to play Origin. You know?
Yes.
And then the numbering of the players now, we're all numbered. They've given Arthur number 1, which they rang me and asked and said that, is it okay if we give Arthur? I said, yeah, mate, give me. Yeah. So Arthur's number 1 and I'm number 2 in the Origin numbering.
That's fantastic. So Scotty, just refresh our memories, mate. So the week of the game, I think it was a Wednesday night game, but I think you had to play club football on the weekend. Is that correct? You didn't have a weekend off. You had to then train Monday, Tuesday, and play Wednesday. Is that how it went?
Yeah, well, we used to do that when we were playing the interstate games, but in Origin they give us the weekend off. So
gotcha. Okay.
Yeah. But New South Wales would always play the weekend, and I think until we got to 1982 when it became a 3-match series. Yeah. They took it seriously then, and you know, give the players a weekend off.
Wonderful memories, Colin. Wonderful memories. So, I mean, the week of Origin camp, was it how you expected Origin? Was it how you expected the Origin camp to be? You had training, a bonding session, that sort of thing. How intense was that week?
Oh, mate, look, I think you'd know yourself, mate. When you're involved in a camp or a footy team, you know, playing jokes on players and all that sort of thing, we're a part of the system, you know. Yeah. And I mean, I remember obviously being a part of the very first Origin game, we used to have a thing where when a new player came into the side, the best way to welcome into the side was ignore him. I remember when Alfie came into the side, Alfie Langer came into the side, we all said, just ignore him, So anyway, we'd come for our medicals and that, and we were all standing in our little groups, and Alfie would came over to me, Gino and Wally, and he came over and he stood there, and we turned our backs on him and walked away, and everyone was ignoring him. So he went up to Bennett and said, I don't think I'm welcome here, Wayne. He said, why is that? He said, no one wants to talk to me. I said, it's all right, mate. Okay, the shutdown's over. Yeah, welcome to the side, And that was part of it. And there was other things we'd do, and then that sort of got Alfie into he used to ring the players up from his room and act as hi, I'm Barry Dick from the Courier Mail. Just want to get a story on you, and he'd interview them and that. And then go into the room, here's your life story, So, part of that, it was a part of Origin too, and that's how it brought us together as a group, the fun times, and obviously, we'd have a few beers leading up to the game, but obviously, 3 days out from the game, no more drinks,
Gotcha.
Heads down.
And mate, who was your roommate at Origin camp in your first Origin?
Well, there you go. Normie Carr.
Oh, it was Normie.
Yeah.
It's funny because we're interviewing Normie tomorrow, and obviously a West legend, well and truly. But what I find most interesting from that first Origin game, some of the amazing legends that came out of that back line. There was yourself, there was Mel, there was Chris Close, Wally Lewis was locked. So you guys were all 19, 20, 21 vintage, weren't you?
Exactly, mate. And I mean, and they fed off Arthur, obviously, for him to lead us out, and he played the full game. And an interesting statistic from that game, the two reserves didn't get on the field.
Correct.
No one wanted to come off,
That's and Bruce Astle and Norman Carr.
Bruce Astle, and they didn't get a start. And, that was the thing back in the days. We only had two reserves, and no one wanted to come off in that first game because, obviously it was the start of, something that was, it's a highlight of the rugby league calendar now.
And mate, I was just going to say, I mean, and having played Queensland pre-Origin, most of those guys on New South Wales side, I'm assuming you played against in 79 when we used to get flogged, your Graham Eady's and your Tommies, your Les Boyds, those types of guys would have been sort of running around against you. Exactly. And then the boot was on the other foot. Did you feel like a sense of complacency from them at all leading up or during the game?
Well, that's one of the things that, I think they make it up. They make it up as an excuse to say that, we never took it serious, we're only playing against them blokes. But then when the Origin series come about and we won the first, 4 years and that, I think they started to say, shit, we better take this to fair dinkum, And obviously now it's a highlight of the rugby league calendar, as I say, but they always made it as an excuse that they never took it seriously. But it was a big thing for us and the Queensland supporters. Every time we played a game at Lane Park, it was packed.
Yeah,
that was the best atmosphere.
Absolutely.
And now, obviously,
that was the thing back then, wasn't it? The crowds were part of folklore.
Exactly.
They were a different breed back then.
Mate, and I mean, for me, that was what it was all about, mate. Get out and do it for the state and the crowd and the supporters that turn up for you, So and that set it up for, obviously big crowds always at Lane Park. Yeah.
It was interesting, Berkey, that probably this generation don't know about, but Scotty was part of that 1987 State of Origin side that went to Long Beach, California.
Oh, of course,
for an exhibition. So that was the fourth game, and a lot of people are clueless about that particular game, but we were talking about it offset, and Scotty has really fond memories about that particular game. So what were some of those memories from flying out to playing?
Well, obviously it was after our State of Origin concept, and we'd won that year, and we got on the plane, and we had a good drink. We were okay, Benny didn't care, we got on the drink, and the poor New South Wales guys, they had to stay off the drink. up the front of the plane and that. So yeah, they didn't get to drink, and yeah, we had a good time when we went across there and that. And yeah, mate, it was a great experience. Obviously, going over there and obviously gridiron being the highlight of the sports calendar over there. They couldn't believe that we didn't wear, helmets and shoulder pads and all that sort of stuff. They said, "You guys are crazy," Anyway, yeah, it sort of showed our game to the American people, and yeah, a lot of people got on board.
That's fantastic. That's really good. Hey, Scott, I just want to fast forward a bit, mate. Obviously, the golden years of Wynnum, and you were once a massive, obviously an integral part of that. 82, like you make the first Origin side, back up, you go to Wynnum, and then 82 rolls along, and the first ever Wynnum premiership. So, like, I'm reading through that side. And those sides, mate, they were amazing times. Can you run us through 82 and what the feeling like was during the year and leading up and the grand final from your recollection for Wynnum?
Oh, mate, look, that, I put that behind number 2 as my favourite all-time rugby league achievement. Obviously playing in the first Origin, and number 2 was winning Manly's first ever premiership in 82. Wynnum, obviously, like Redcliffe, is like a little town on its own.
Yep.
And man, they love their rugby league in Wynnum, and just getting on the bus to go to the game. DJ, we all got together at the club, and before we went into Lane Park, and we all sat down, and like Arthur said, you only get one opportunity, mate, and this is it. And that bus trip to Lane Park was the quietest bus trip I ever had. We're on the way through, just the mindset of what we had to do, our job, what we had to do, and then we turn up there and it's a full house. I think there was 32,000 there on the day. Yeah. And mate, we got there and the walk out and see all the red and green, and mate, it's like anything, I suppose, same as yourself, Berkey. When you get out there and that, you just got to switch on, mate, and get out there and do your job, and obviously, to win that game, and to come off the field, and we did a lap of honour and that, and to go back to Wynnum, and when we turned up there, to see the people on the footy field, the footy lights were on, and the footy field was packed, and the clubhouse was packed, and mate, there's probably about 10,000 people there on the night, and mate, yeah, it was great. It was like I said, it was. Behind the first Origin, it was the second highlight of my rugby league career, mate, and yeah, something I'll always remember.
Man, I'm just looking through the side, and there was yourself, like Terry Butler, Brett French, Gino. There were mainstays of Origin footy back then as well. Yeah. He had a great front row of Mark Zillman, David Green, and Rod Morris. So you had a really good engine as well. So it was a very, very good side. Terrific side.
Well, I think from that comp, Berkey, and I think you'll back this up, is when we had that great side, I think it done great for the Brisbane comp, because everyone wanted to beat us, and when we play against Valleys or against East or South, they would lift themselves to beat us, and I think it got the best out of, the club sides or the players in the Brisbane competition, and I think that formed a really great competition in the 80s in the Queensland comp.
Because we were talking, Berkey, about the fanaticism, weren't we, with the supporters?
Yeah. Without a doubt.
Of how amazing it was. And as Scotty was saying, like the little places like Wynnum and Redcliffe and, down at West End and South, there was streamers and all the shops were involved, and the people at the games, and it was totally different.
Well, the home game, Berkey's like at Valleys, you'd have a full house.
Yeah.
You go to South, full house.
Yeah.
East, full house. There was always, at the home grounds, it was packed.
And the good thing about it, guys, was they'd all stand around the sideline. They'd be 6 deep on the sideline, which I love, because you could hear the abuse, and you're right in the Coliseum of it.
Oh, the chook pen was the best, mate.
Yeah.
You're exactly right.
Wally loved it, mate. When he came to Wynnum, it was he loved it after that. He hated it before that, but he loved it after he come to Wynnum.
Hey, Scotty, what was your did you have a pre-game ritual that Colin Scott went through? Like, was your Friday night meal spaghetti bolognese, or did you have a special pair of jocks you wore, or what was the Colin Scott ritual with your games?
Yeah, mate, obviously, meal-wise, you know, I love me spaghetti, so I'd have a good spaghetti feed, and like, yeah, mate, I suppose from a game sense of point of view, you know, obviously, without overthinking the game, you know, you just set your minds on your goals or your achievements. You know, obviously fullback, you know, keeping your eye on the ball, taking the bombs. I dropped a couple of bombs, but
but, we all have.
Yeah, but yeah, mate, it's just focusing on your job and what you had to do when you went out there and played. And obviously Gino was a big part of my game because he could get a ball away, you know, in tackles and that. So I'd always, every time he took the ball up, I'd follow him because I knew he could get the ball away. So, yeah.
But you're a bit superstitious too about number one, because you were number one for Queensland, you were number one for Wynnum, you were number one for the Broncos, you were number one for Australia. You know, so that number one jersey for you was pretty special, wasn't it?
Yeah, and I mean, obviously, again, when you played at home, Berkey, you know, Wynnum and that, you know, you had to pump you up, you know, and get you out there and you know, obviously do your job. But mate, yeah, and I know, you know, when we had younger players coming into the side and that, and we'd pull them aside and have a good yarn with them, you know.
Yeah.
So, you know, put them in the right headspace, and I think that's a big part of the game, you know, is making sure the young fellas, you know, just go out there with the right headspace and that, and confidence.
It's good point, Colin. It's people can overthink the game these days from a player perspective, and I think you just put it so eloquently. You just got to keep it simple.
Exactly,
and
mate.
Play to your strengths.
Exactly, man. And you know, it's funny. I used to, at some stages, you know, commentate the game to myself. You know.
Yeah.
Nothing wrong with that.
What was it like when 87 came around?
Yeah.
The last grand final, Redcliffe and Brothers. 1988 was going to be a whole different ball game. So it's an interesting statistic that you and Berkey actually were inaugural Broncos.
Yeah.
Did you? I'll throw it to you two guys. Did you see a switch in the aura of the game in Brisbane? Did you see a switch in the crowds?
Well, obviously, and I said that to you earlier, Berkey. I think the competition in the 80s in Brisbane, I thought was fantastic, and was great for the Queensland country areas.
Yeah.
And I think the invent of the Broncos, although, you know, they're a big part of the comp now and that, and it's the way it is, you know, it tore apart, I think, the countryside of Queensland Rugby League, and also the club competition in Brisbane, where, you know, you go to games now and, you know, the crowds ain't there and that, and it tore apart the BRL, I believe, but you know, it was all about the dollar, and I suppose that's the way it was, and that's the way it is now.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more, Colin. I mean, what I really loved about the 80s, and you'd agree, mate, was those state league trips away where you'd go to your Wide Bays, you'd go to your Toowoomba's, and they would be pumped up 2 weeks. They knew you were coming to town. They wanted to ambush us.
Yep.
But the feeling in those games in those country areas during those state league were intense.
For sure. And they were great crowds, mate.
They were great crowds.
You know, and it was great competition, as you say. You know, and it's, you know, unfortunately that's not there now, and we've lost a lot of country clubs.
Yeah.
You know, I believe because of that, and because of, you know, the QRL or the BRL now. You know, the Sydney sides have got first option to country players. You know, which you know, unfortunately is taking away the QRL comp. Yeah, right.
Hey, Scotty, can I just pare back a little bit? Tell us about your first test, 83. Like, that must have been a struggle, because I think Queensland won the series 3-0 that year from memory.
Yeah, they did.
Yeah,
they did 3-0.
Yeah, because
obviously a great thrill from a young kid coming from Townsville down to be picked for Australia.
Yeah. Well, unfortunately, we lost that game. Yeah.
In 83.
They'd already won it.
Yeah.
We lost the 82 game, the 83 match, which was in Brisbane. But yeah, mate, look, getting me first Test jersey or anything like that was, a great experience for me. And, I feel let down that, I believe I could have done more in the game, but they were just too good for us on the night. They had a good side too. They had Mark Graham, Olsen Filipana, and a few good front rowers in that game. And mate, it was, like I said, it was a letdown for me. But we won an only Test. But that's life. And
you have a Test jersey, brother. It's yours.
Yeah, well, that's it. A lot of people, that I believe were better than me, and when I look at it, I look at, Smoke and Joe and that, players like that, they were good enough to play for Australia back in our days. As you know, mate, they were great players.
We were talking before, Berkey, Scotty and I, just off camera, how unlucky he was not to go on that 1982 Kangaroo Tour.
For sure.
Great year with Wynnum, Queensland fullback. Unfortunately, Ian Schubert got picked ahead of Scotty and
came down to a casting vote.
Oh, did it?
Yeah, because the 3 Queensland selectors, they picked me, and the 3 New South Wales selectors picked Ian Schubert, and it came down to the ARL, which
Kevin Humphries.
Ken Arthurson.
Ken Arthurson. Oh well, he's a Manly guy, and Schubert was at Manly then, wasn't he?
Well, there was a deal done.
Yeah.
I'm saying. I mean, that's obviously goes without saying. Then that's
Yeah.
But there's always a horse curl. Go on, mate.
Well, I was just saying that was probably Scotty was saying that was probably one of his lowlights in his career, was not making that 82 Kangaroo Tour, which I still to this day think that he was bitterly,
Well, we'd won the Origin series and we won the grand final.
Correct.
It was at the back end of the season, and Australia's side got named a week after our grand final. So I thought, well, I'm still fit, still going around. Whereas Schubert had, he'd already played for Australia and that, and I was just a young kid. I was only 22 at the time, and I thought it'd be a great, and like yourself, Berkey, everyone wanted to go on a Kangaroo Tour.
Yeah.
Back in the days,
without a doubt, it's the pinnacle. It's the pinnacle. Hey, Scotty, just fast forward a little bit, mate. Looking at the 84 premiership side here, mate, you never played in 84. They had Brian Walsh at fullback. Yeah. What was the story around 84 for yourself?
Well, there we go. Here's another one. I got sent off in a game against South.
Really?
In South, yeah. Who was the fullback? Was it you, Berkey?
No, it was Badge.
No, not Badge. I was a winger, sorry. I'll think of his name. You'd probably know him. And he stepped back inside of me, and I just reached out, and he ran into my arm.
Yep.
And the referee sent me off for a head-eye tackle. Oh. So I missed the grand final.
You're kidding me. Was that in the semi-final that happened?
Yeah.
Oh, really?
And, I got suspended, and, Brian Walsh played fullback.
Who back then, Walshy was probably the most versatile player in the competition, if not Australia.
Great player, fantastic player. He was, the 5'8" in our very first Origin premiership win.
Correct.
And then Wally came along and that, but no, he was a great player.
Like it was a 42-8 shellacking in the grand final. Once again, looking through this side, Scotty, other than yourself, French, Miles, Butler, Lewis at halfback, Ian French, Mal Green, Greg Dowling, David Green, Gary Coyne. Like that is an intense side. That's
mate, for sure. And after the game, I remember going in the dressing rooms and took a photo of me tipping a beer over Walshy. And I thought, give us my jersey. He said, no, it's just my jersey. So I had to take a reserve jersey. Yeah, good on him.
Like Simo and I were talking, Simo, pre-interview about that's possible. That was one of the best club sides in Brisbane history, that Wynnum side of 84,
well, even
with Scotty not playing.
After that game, Berkey, and when Canterbury won the grand final in Sydney, they put a thing to the Bulldogs. You want to play the Brisbane? How about we play the Brisbane Premiers against the Sydney Premiers? and the
Peter Moore,
the CEO of the Bulldogs, Eddie said, "Nah, not going to do it, mate.
Not interested."
We had about, I think, 4 internationals in our side and 7 state of origin
players.
Yeah, so would have been a good,
good
matchup, yeah.
Without a doubt, mate. Fast forward to 86 against brothers. Once again, a fantastic side. Yourself, Scotty Lewis, Gino, Wally, Bobby Linder was there then, Ian French, Mal Green again, and Greg Dowling. So, like, names Australia, Queensland, just fantastic names.
It was a great side. And like I said before, you know, the Brisbane sides back then, they'd just lift themselves, you know, when they played against us. And, you know, it was a very close game, that one, and we were lucky to get away with it.
Yeah.
14-6, yeah. And, you know, what was his name? Steve Carter, God bless him, he's unfortunately passed away now. Yeah. He gave it to Greg Dowling that day, you know, and it was on. But like I said, mate, it was a great compact in those days, and I think Brothers won it the next year.
Yeah, they did the last one.
Yeah.
Very last one, yeah, which was a great side.
It was good days. Great days.
There was an interesting, just going back to Scotty's origin playing days, Berkey. I tapped on it before with you, of how Scotty was alerted that he was in the Queensland side. Yeah. Can you tell us how you got told?
Yeah, well, obviously back in the days we were sent telegrams.
Oh, of course, yeah.
Yeah, so I had a knock on the door, and the bloke with the telegram, I said, "Oh, it's a telegram." I said, "Yeah." "Mr. Scott." I said, "Yeah." Got the telegram, opened the telegram up, and it was from Ross Livermore. Contact Queensland Rugby League, you're in the side.
That is gold. Have you still got the telegram, Scotty, somewhere?
Yeah, mate. I got it. I threw it up on Facebook.
So, Scotty, when we got, so in 87, obviously there was going to be a nucleus, we knew it was going to be the following year, and there were some priority signings. Obviously Reeves came to you sometime in 87, say, Collier, what are your movements for 88? Is that how your conversation went down?
Yeah, well, obviously, you know, Wally, Gino, Greg Dowling,
Turtle,
yeah, Alfie. We all got signed, we're offered contracts, and yeah, we all, and I wasn't a real big fan of it, because I thought, well, we're going down there, let's stay here, but yeah, obviously all my mates were going, so I thought, oh yeah, I'll go over myself too. So yeah, we all went across there in 82, and I think, you know, like I said back earlier, you know, it sort of stuffed the BRL competition and that. So, but yeah, mate, we all got together and then went to the Broncos, and that was it from there. So.
Tell us about those early days, though, Scotty, at the Broncos. Like, tell us from like that first training session, and just a couple of little things that people probably don't know.
Yeah, well, I suppose it was like you know, like the Brisbane rep team, Berkey. You know,
yeah,
we're all, you know, together playing and that. So we're all pulled together, but obviously playing in the Sydney comp. And I think you remember the first game we played Manly, and they were the premiership winners from the year before.
That's right.
We telled them up 30 odd to 6 or 7. I don't know I can't remember the score, but
it was 44-12.
Yeah, we telled them up at Lane Park, and I think that set up our season for us. And yeah,
and you remember that first game?
Oh, mate, yeah. You know, the early years, you know, a lot of the population in Brisbane didn't really get behind the Broncos because of the BRL comp. But as we've gone on now, obviously, you know, they attract the biggest crowds in the NRL now. So yeah, it's a big part of the game. But yeah, mate, I suppose pulling on that jersey and that same thing, mate. And I suppose it helped me being a part of the Wynnum and the first Origin and Origin games. Yeah. You know, and to be part of that, obviously, you know, was just kept me head in the right frame of mind, and just get out there and do your job.
Mate, can I pare it back a bit? I mean, Simo and I quite often wax lyrical. From your perspective, what was what was your favourite ground you played at in the BRL that you loved going to, knew it was going to be on?
Well, look, obviously, Cougar was the best, but I'd say Bash Up Park, mate.
Bash Up, yeah. It's in the grand final, isn't it?
Oh, mate.
Everyone does.
Mate, everyone gets into it there, man. It was, when you went there, you knew you had to back up. It's going to be on today, boys. So when it starts, let's just get into it.
Yeah.
Zulu.
Yeah, Big Zulu and the boys. Yeah.
They love to get it on. And Scotty, from your playing perspective in the Brisbane comp, who were some of the standout players you loved playing with, and who did you look forward to playing against? Anyone really sticks in your mind in those areas?
Oh, look, we had some great players in the Brisbane comp back in the 80s, and I think you'll know, Mel, Badge, Belcher, and Smoke and Joe. Geez, I could go on all night, with the quality of players we had, but. Obviously South, is a great rivalry with them, and obviously with Valleys too. When Wally was there, I remember we used to give it to each other. When we were playing each other. We used to throw the ball at him and that. But after the game, we'd shake hands.
It was all fun. Yeah.
It was all fun, mate. So,
yeah.
But it was a great competition and great rivalry.
And was
club sides.
And was Desi Morris your best coach you coached
played
under?
Yeah, Desi Morris for sure, mate. He was just one of those guys. We looked up to him and that, and he had a great personality, and with the players, he had a good attraction with players and that, and mate, he was a great bloke.
Yeah,
fantastic.
And Colin, it must be very, very proud for you being one of the first Indigenous guys to represent Queensland in the Origin period, and to forge a path for some other wonderful Indigenous guys that have come through. Do you still catch up with those guys in the Indigenous games when they're on pre-season?
Yeah, sure, mate. And I mean, obviously with the work I do, work with a lot of Indigenous kids, and there's some great Indigenous talent out there, and there still is. And unfortunately, in our communities, they don't move away from that community. And it was the same as me up in Townsville. I moved to Brisbane when I was 19, and I had a lot of kids that I was playing with. They were some of them were better than me, and they didn't get the opportunities back in the days. And I look at it now, and rugby league's still a big thing in our communities, and we've still got some great players. So, if I get out amongst the community and we see a young fella there, hopefully I can get him down and play with Wynnum or someone like that to get him, an opportunity and, go on and achieve what I did in my career, because, I was like them back in the days. I never thought that I'd wear a Queensland jersey or an Australian jersey, but look at that. Yeah. It all happened.
Because your work in the community too probably spans back to in the year 2000. A lot of people might not know that you won the Australian Sports Award.
Yeah, mate, it was just an award I got. I was, doing a fair bit of work in the Indigenous communities and that, and obviously the rugby league background sort of helped me achieve that award too. So, mate, it was a great honour, and I feel honoured now with the people that have got that award. And, being a part of all that, it's a great honour. So it's something that I hold dear to my heart. And when I get out in the communities, because I come from a lot of the same backgrounds as these young ones that are out there now, and just tell them, if you want it, go out there and achieve it.
Yeah,
that's a wonderful achievement, Colin. Great stuff you're doing, mate, for those kids to get them down and get them settled, because it's a big thing moving home, as you can attest to it. And to have someone like you in their corner, it's just, and that's the richness these kids need from guys like yourself, just to understand the sacrifice they've got to make to make it.
Exactly, mate. And I mean, I think today, with rugby league, it's become it's a job now.
Yeah.
And, obviously in the game, and obviously the same as the workplace, I tell them they've got to turn up every week and that, but they've got to have the attitude too, you know. You know, if you've got a, you know, good attitude, you know, you'll make it not only in sport but in life in general.
Well, guys, we've got to get close wrapping up. Simo, any final thoughts on Scotty?
Mate, there was just one thing that I want to very briefly just touch on it, and I'll let Scotty do all the talking. But there was one thing a couple of weeks ago that, and I'd spoken to you about it, Berkey, that a Wynnum fan from back in the day, his wife reached out to Scotty about getting something signed, some memorabilia signed or what have you. Yeah. So Scotty went one step further and for this fan, because he's a big Colin Scott fan. So I'll pass it over to you, mate.
As he said, you know, there's a lady that was on Facebook and she messaged me through Facebook and just told me that her husband was a big Wynnum Manly fan and a big, you know, obviously followed my career and was a big fan of myself. He said, have you got anything that you could sign and I'll pay for it? And I said, oh, yeah, right. So I done up a piece and I signed it. It was Wynnum Manly's first ever premiership.
Fantastic.
And I signed it and I said, look, I'll be happy to deliver it. And she said,
wow.
oh my God, you would you? She said, yeah, no, that's not for you. So I said, give me your address. And she didn't tell him. And I went around with a piece and knocked on the door. He opened the door and he holy hell, what are you doing here? I said,
that is gold.
And I give him the present. He opened it up, and yeah, mate, he was over the moon, you know. And I felt good about it too, because obviously it's about giving back.
Yeah,
I think it's a good concept, and I'm sure these players of today, I think that it's about giving back to the supporters and that, you know. I think it's a good idea for rugby league players to do, you know.
Guys, we've got that video, so for those who want to look at When They Were Kings Facebook page or website, we'll have it up there over the next week or so and see the impact that Colin had on that young gentleman's life with a wonderful gesture. Good work, Scotty. Well done, mate.
Always.
Look, from my end, Cole, just want to reach out, mate, once again and say thank you so much for joining us today. It's a great thrill of mine and Simo and all the BRL tragics pre-88 to have someone like you just open up with your richness and your integrity about your love for the game. And mate, we really appreciate you being on the show today, mate. And hopefully we can catch up soon when all this is over for a nice beer and a steak somewhere and thank you more personally.
Yeah, thanks, Berkey. I mean, I'd like to pass on my respects to the players previous to us, you know, in the 60s and 50s and 60s that played in the game it is today, you know. So I just want to shout out to all them players that played before my time that inspired us or myself to play the game of rugby league and thank you.
Well said, Scotty. Good on you, mate. So, guys, that's the end of When They Were Kings today. Once again, thanks to Colin Scott. He's Mike Simpson. I'm David Burke, and we'll see you on the next show. Bye for now.
Cheers.
See you guys.